Mr. President-elect and former President.
Thank you.
Donald, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And looking forward to
If America were a house, President Joe Biden might just be the tenant who left the pipes leaking, the windows shattered, and the bills unpaid. As Donald Trump prepares to step back into the Oval Office after his shocking election victory, the proverbial cleanup is shaping up to be nothing short of Herculean. Let's dive into the cordial photo ops, hidden disasters, and straight-up messes awaiting Trump's second act. In a rare act of civility, Biden welcomed Trump to the White House for the first time in 4 years, and the two exchanged pleasantries in front of a crackling fireplace. Biden, all smiles, said he was committed to ensuring a smooth transition, and Trump, not one to miss a soundbite, thanked former President Joe Biden for this while saying, "I appreciate very much a transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get." The irony here, this marks a stark contrast from their first transition in 2020, when Biden wasn't even invited to the White House post-election. Some traditions just aren't built to last. In fact, Trump had claimed that the 2020 election was rigged, a statement that he repeated on more occasions than one during this most recent election campaign. But of course, Biden wasn't petty enough to blame the outcome of Kamala Harris' campaign on electoral malpractice. And we all know how civil Biden can be. But let's not be fooled by the warm handshakes and photos. Biden and Trump's conversation might have been polite, but the laundry list of issues Biden is leaving behind could keep 1,000 task forces busy for years. The first item on President Trump's agenda is to address the staggering increase in the national debt, which has reached an astounding $36 trillion, an increase of $13 trillion since the year 2020. The administration of Vice President Joe Biden, in its infinite wisdom, financed a significant portion of this through short-term borrowings, meaning that they essentially took out payday loans in order to fund the government. As opposed to purchasing long-term bonds, which would have resulted in lower interest rates, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen opted to purchase 2-year Treasury bills instead. Now, President Trump is faced with the challenging task of refinancing this mountain of debt at interest rates that are significantly higher than before. I appreciate you doing that, Joe. Inflation is stubbornly clinging to the economy like a putrid odor, despite the fact that energy prices have collapsed. The United States is now more susceptible to price shocks as a result of Vice President Biden's decision to reduce the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, otherwise known as the SPR, to historic lows. The SPR has decreased from 638 million barrels when he ran for office to just 392 million barrels today. Although there has been a slight improvement in the reserve, we are still a long way from having the necessary safety net under our control. Bringing it back to life? Trump is currently facing that challenge. Biden has not only left the country's weapons stockpile at a dangerously low level, but he has also left inflation and debt at an abnormally high level. The United States military readiness appears to be more precarious than it has ever been for a number of reasons, including the fact that it is sending billions of dollars in aid to Ukraine and navigating tense relations in the Middle East. To put things in clearer terms, it's a little bit like being given the keys to a car that has no gas and 4 flat tires. Mr. Trump, I wish you the best of luck with that. If we're being honest, the US education system became a battleground while Biden was in charge of educational institutions.
The education system in the United States is in desperate need of a makeover for a number of reasons, including it being accused of fostering division through its curricula and a generation of students struggling to meet basic literacy standards. In addition, let us not overlook the state of the housing market, the slump in manufacturing, and the ever-widening gap between blue and red states. If Biden's administration had a motto, it might just be, "Why fix it today when you can leave it for tomorrow?" Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, allocated a whopping $375 billion in taxpayer funds, but much of it was either mismanaged or spent at a snail's pace. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, for example, promised 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations but delivered 8. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris managed to roll out rural internet access to a grand total of 0 communities, despite having $42 billion at her disposal. It's almost as if they were competing to see who could do less with more.
And then there's the viral Project Veritas video, where an EPA advisor admitted that the administration was throwing money out the door as fast as possible before Trump could reclaim it. Nothing screams fiscal responsibility, like comparing your spending habits to tossing gold bars off the Titanic. If Biden had a hobby, it might be creating crises out of thin air. Millions of undocumented migrants have flooded the U.S., straining resources in blue cities that once prided themselves on being sanctuary havens. Add to that a rise in violent crime, fueled in part by policies undermining law enforcement, and you've got a recipe for urban chaos. On the international front, Biden leaves Trump the unenviable task of extricating the U.S. from the quagmire that is the Russia-Ukraine war, while also restoring some semblance of balance in the Middle East. With allies questioning America's reliability and adversaries emboldened, the world stage is looking more like a circus, both exhaustive and exhausting. Yet, rather than spending his remaining weeks in office trying, Biden's legacy, if one can call it that, might be defined by the sheer scale of challenges he's leaving behind. From the debt to inflation, weapon shortages to education failures, the list is to fix any of it. Biden seems more focused on spending every last dollar at his disposal. It's possible that Trump will go after Biden in the court of law, but he won't make any promises that the prices of things would stay the same. But hold for a second, can you imagine Biden spending a night in jail? That would be the talk of the century. But here's where things take on an even more interesting turn. Biden just agreed with the American Federation of Government Employees to keep 42,000 Social Security Administration workers from having to go back to work. This is a key issue for Trump's team as they try to change the way the federal government works. There are many people who think that Biden would help the country if he allowed the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to be quickly refilled. In 2022, when inflation was very high, he drained that store of crude oil to try to lower gas prices and help Democrats win the midterm elections. The reserve held 638 million barrels of oil when Biden took office. Now, it holds only 392 million barrels, the lowest amount in 40 years. The reserve has grown by 12% in the last year, but we are still not safe from a big price change. Biden is also leaving behind a portfolio of Treasury debt that is too heavy on short-term instruments, which is a bad thing. Instead of issuing 10- and 30-year bonds to cover the recent $1.8 trillion federal budget deficit, Janet Yellen has piled up on 2-year Treasury bills. This is a blatantly political move to keep mortgage rates from going up a lot. According to Robert Van Battenberg of the well-known Bear Traps report, about 30% of all debt is now in short-term notes, up from 15% in 2023. Charles Gasparino writes about this in the New York Post. Due to the huge amount of money the government has borrowed, that is an incredibly quick move. It made sense to borrow long because the yield curve has been flat for most of the last 2 years. Yellen didn't, so her replacement will have to deal with higher costs going forward. Brottenberg writes, "The Treasury now faces a substantial amount of short-term debt maturing annually, which must be refinanced at significantly higher interest rates. This is causing a substantial rise in the government's interest expense. This country has a lot of problems. Unfortunately, Biden's harmful rules on electric vehicles have caused Detroit automakers to lose billions of dollars and lay off workers. We also have millions of undocumented immigrants who are breaking the budgets of blue cities, more violent crime because Democrats have weakened law enforcement, and military leaders warning that we are running out of weapons. The Biden years set many landmines for the Trump team that will take over."
For Trump, the road ahead will be anything but smooth, no matter how cordial the transition appears. The real question is, can he clean up this mess before it spirals further out of control? Stay tuned, because this political drama is just getting started. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more juicy content such as this one.